Hey everybody, welcome back to Engaging the Phenomenon. And today we have a special guest, and that is the Astral or Tyler Stevens. Tyler, I know you as the Astral, infamous UFO Twitter X handle that I've seen for many years now. And it says here you're a futurist, researcher, musician, and developer, uh, astral projection enthusiast, and you've been featured on Vice. So welcome to Engaging the Phenomenon. Finally, it's long overdue.
Right. Thanks, James, man. Appreciate you really having me and looking forward to the discussion, man.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of your tweets or posts now on X about CE5, and so I always thought it was cool. There was somebody else that was kind of open-minded and was into it or was practicing it, had experience with it, on the UFO Twitter or the UFO X space. Uh, I guess it's a little bit more out there now, but even just a few years ago, it was like, if you mentioned CE5 in the like um, within the conversation of like official UAP transparency and disclosure, it's often associated with Dr. Stephen Greer. So there's knee-jerk reactions of, oh, CE5,
Right.
so it was always cool to see a fellow traveler in that regard. So we've never had a true discussion like this, so it's really cool for me to find out how did you get into all this?
I got into really exploring psychic phenomenon through a precognitive dream that I had. So I was studying audio engineering and video production. And at that time, I had a dream where I got robbed. And 3 days later, I actually got robbed. So I came home and to my apartment, and the exact scenario took place. And it was just a complete paradigm shift for me. So as I was looking into, coming down from that traumatic experience, I started to really look into dreams and astral projection and started exploring astral projection and out of body experiences. So I became interested in some topics that were, out of my range for what I knew at that time, and started exploring it where I wanted to know, what was actually going on, and physically, if you're able to go outside of your body and fly around these places, I definitely want to be able to experience that and try it out and see if it's for real, especially after I had a precognitive dream. So, astral projection and having an out of body experience was the gateway, I think, into the reaching out with CE5 and HICE, because as I had an out of body experience after exploring it after a few months, I learned about, this was like probably 15 to 20 years ago when the CE5 app was first being
Yeah,
developed.
yeah, yeah,
And so I learned about the app, and I'm like, okay, whatever, like let me just buy it and go ahead and do it. And so like I'm out on my back porch just like playing the tones, like nothing's really happening for me after a couple of times that I'm doing it. And I took it a little bit more serious and went out in like a little bit more seclusion, and it wasn't until I started going out with multiple people that things actually happened. So the first significant thing, and really the most significant thing that's ever happened to me with in terms of me reaching out with HICE, was me going out with my brother spontaneously after just hanging out for a night. We went out to a secluded location, didn't, you know, have much going on around. It was, near a water. We were on this hill, and I just started playing the tones. And he was interested in UFOs, but not nearly as much as I was, and didn't really know what was going on. So I'm like, "Yo, you want to try this thing and contact aliens?" He's like, "Yo, sure, whatever."
yeah.
So we're trying it, and we're going, playing the tones. And about 15 minutes in, he's like, "Well, what's supposed to happen?" And as soon as he said that, this light appeared in the sky, and I was like, "Oh, look, check this out." And I grabbed my phone and flashed it twice. And so I flashed with my flashlight twice, and it flashed back twice at us. And we're like, "Oh, what?" We're going crazy. We're like, "What the heck?" And so I did it one more time, and it flashed back twice at us again, and then ended up fading out into the sky. And so that, the drive home, just that whole experience was really another like paradigm kind of shifting thing where it was just confirmation that, there was something to it. and again was able to experience it more so with small groups of people. And so that kind of got my journey started into the UFO and the UAP experiencer side of things.
Yeah, I love that story because I have one similar. It was I forget what year it was, but there was a blackout here on the East Coast, maybe 10 or 15 years ago, somewhere in the, and within that period. And I remember I was sitting on my deck, it was still you know, not quite dark out yet. And I was reading Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, and and then I did a meditation, and all this, and I did the CE5 process, whatever the CE5 type protocols.
Hmm.
And uh, then I went out later that night, and it was a blackout, so the sky was like pristine. The whole East Coast was out of power, and I had a laser pointer. I always make a disclaimer: people don't use laser pointers. This is, they're dangerous. If you ever do, never shine it directly at any object. Um, but so I went out and there. But when I was outside, I already had seen a moving light, right? So I said, "Oh, let me see if it's something I can interact with." So I shined the laser in the sky, and it flashed back. So I said, okay, let me like really try. So I shined it three times and it flashed back three times. I
Ooh.
was like, oh crap. And I said, okay, really, like I'm gonna really do this. Like, come on. So then I shined the laser and I held it down for like 3 to 5 seconds and then let it off. And then the craft slowly lit up really bright and then shut off in like the same time sequence that I had it shined, right? Because the first one was a quick single flash. It did a single flash. I did one, two, three. It did one, two, three, and then I did the slow hold, and it did the same thing. And I was just like,
Right.
that that level of direct interaction is profound, right? And so, you don't have to see this crazy, like a flying disc, to have a meaningful and direct interaction, right? Uh, yeah,
Right. It's a lot more subtle, I think, than people think. Even with psi phenomenon and,
right.
psychic experiences where telepathy isn't you walking around reading people's mind. It's these subtle things and synchronicities that, you think you're thinking of somebody and they call you or something like that, where it's very personal. And even with a lot of the experiences that I've had, after that one, it's like, you kind of see it out of the corner of your eye, or it's like a thought reactor. I think a lot more of authentic type of experiences and contact is not like you said, like something that's like undeniable, where it's like a thing and it just flies across the sky so that everybody sees. It's like a thought reaction where you're like, okay, do something right here. And then something happens in reaction to that. And you're like, oh shit. Like, but nobody kind of sees it except you because you're having that thought right there.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. And one cool thing about the group CE5s is if there is coherence among the group, there could be that kind of coherent dynamic where it's responding to the group thought almost, which I mean, one time, oh, you go ahead.
No, you asked about the before. Have I ever been to a watch before this? And I had not, but I know my friends had been to a Greer watch, and I think you'd like this story. As they're going out to the beach, this is their like first time they've kind of paid their money. They're going out to the beach. There's like a group of like 40 or 50 of them, and as they're going out, they're like, "Man, I'm excited! I can't wait to go out here. Like this is going to be so cool." But behind them, the people that are walking behind them are like, oh man, I'm so scared. Like if I see something, I'm running out of here. Like like I can't, I don't even want to be here. Like they're like, and so my friends are like, ah, damn, nothing's gonna happen tonight. So it's, so you want to, that is important. Like the whole camaraderie or the vibe of the group, I think is a big thing too.
And CE5, I mean, I can't overstate this. Like there's CE5 events, right? Like even contact in the desert or whatever. That is not conducive to high level contact experiences as far as contact work goes, in my experience. And I've been watching this for over 15 years and and participating and the whole thing. I've been very involved in the like the CE5 network, you can say. And that it's better to have a group of just two people that are very intimate with each other than to have a group of 200 people
Right.
by far. Um, like the level of coherence among participants is key, and it doesn't mean they have to believe all the same things, right? But they have to kind of be, in my opinion, the idea of that is resonance, right? Either resonance or entrainment, one or the other. If you have that, it's gonna, you know, it's gonna amplify the depth of the contact experience like a millionfold. Um, but uh, the um, the CE5 stuff. So um,
So I started to try and develop my own binaural beats. So
okay,
I got motivated off of Greer's app, and I was like, oh well, if and then I learned about Joseph Burks and HICE and what he was doing, and it was able to talk with him about his some of his protocols. And then one of the cool things about the app really was this feature. It was actually online where you could collaborate or see which other people were trying CE5 in your vicinity. So you could do like in 100-mile radius, you could see like who else was downloading the app or like using it at all. So I just like hit everybody up and was like
yeah,
on an email chain, it was like, who's down to go out? And got just together with a bunch of people and we're going out. So it was just like a collaborative effort, I think, a lot of the time to just like figure out, and explore it and see who was just up for like going out and actually trying it. So that was I think a good start for me of exploring it, not necessarily like, oh, you have to go out and do this certain protocol and to make this contact, but I was like, man, to me like there's something here. I've been just experiencing it, but like how is it going to be like how are other people going to be able to be curious enough to go out and do this like I just did?
yeah, for sure. And you mentioned something important there about like the protocols or process. Over the years, I mean, how have you refined your own process and what does that look like?
You know what? I've less tried to hunt down or focus on the experience or experiencing it and trying to gather data and testing it. And a lot of people are asking like, "Oh, well, how do you try to achieve?" I don't really try to essentially achieve a lot of the experiences that I have before in my past. And I think it was just because I was so motivated at the time. Dude, when I first learned about astral projection, I was obsessed with it, dude. Like I would wake up in the morning and I would meditate like 5 times a day. And
Yeah,
and like like and log my dreams and read books like the whole day, and it was just my life. And I think
for sure. Yeah.
to for and for so for 3 months I was able to focus solely on achieving an astral projection, like an out of body experience. And so that level to me, it's a tough thing it's almost like a superpower to me. And for people to achieve it, it's not like you just like pick up a book on astral projection and then like you're having out of body experiences, bro. Like it's a long process that you have to work at. And I just think that my state of mind now is a lot more in like, how can I help people get to where I was right in the beginning there of like learning about this stuff and exploring it, personally and experiencing it, but also like how to gather data to show that like scientifically this is really happening. So it's shifted a little bit from me trying to like find out which best and I do want to find out which the best protocols are, just like remote viewing, like what people are doing, meditative states or listening to some sort of binaural beats or frequencies, something like that. But I think a lot of it is just personal, of being open enough to explore yourself and like read yourself of like how best it works for you.
Yeah. And for people that are interested in astral projection, uh what what resources did you find most helpful?
Well, I found that just reading books about it mentally, start like projecting and being really focused on dream recall, uh intentional dreaming. So having the intention of remembering your dreams or having some sort of experience or remembering something from your dream helped me. So really worked on dream work, that sort of thing, and then just being really focused on having the experience, and that just really worked for me. I was just it was just the long-term kind of goal that I had to experience this, and knowing that there were phases to it. So there was the vibrational state, or the state where you realize there's like these sounds and cracklings and these figures and shapes that appear. So it was a progression of like realization of saying like, okay, I'm exploring this, I'm trying to recognize some of the states or the progression that I'm going through.
And have you ever like compared it to something like the Monroe Institute Gateway process, or did you kind of ad hoc it, just like build
Yeah,
build your own?
yeah, I really just was exploring it from an audio engineering perspective. So I was, seeing that the binaural beats, the Robert Monroe, what he was doing over there, and how they were achieving, as I'm exploring astral projection, I'm learning about Robert Monroe and reading his books as well, and seeing how his exploration is not only through out of body experiences, but through his, audio production, the production and the radio thing and all of that, his progression into the binaural beats and exploring that through out of body experiences. So I was looking at just different ways in which I can kind of bring my unique flavor, because at the time I'm working on audio production. I'm doing, a lot of the time I was just working on hip hop, so it was like I was in the studio with Lil Wayne and all these stars, and I'm trying to say, aliens, and I'm super interested in the topic and dreams and seeing how I can just add a unique flavor. And I think that's where I came up with Astral. The idea for Astral was a musician called Astral, and how the ideas and the songs came about was I was communicating with my future self. So in the future, I'm this musician, I'm this star, and I'm rapping about out of body experiences, astral projection, alien contact, all of this non-human intelligence. And I'm telling myself through dreams back through time about it and being like, dude, like this is all taking place. You have to be this person. You have to become the astral. And so that's kind of the idea behind the character of the astral and the music. So it's like a conceptual type of idea and album where I'm rapping about me coming back through time. So I'm communicating with myself and I'm telling myself like, dude, you got to become this person. And I'm like, what are you talking about? So
Yeah.
I'm kind of playing out this scene in this thing, and it's kind of manifesting in real time.
Yeah. Did you, and in your study and practice of like astral projection and remote viewing, did you find that there was a correlation with that and the CE5 work? Or like was it one whole like bigger process for you, or was it like compartmentalized in your practice and development?
It felt like a progression into the topics of when I was becoming interested in them. So, as getting into after my precognitive dream and getting and realizing after that, learning about astral projection and then exploring it. I think it was, here's the four topics that to me in my entire life, I have found that when I have personally explored them, there's been some experiences and that I've progressed in learning more about what I'm trying to explore. The first one is dreaming, like precognitive dreaming, in which you're paying attention to your dreams and you're finding that you're gaining information, possibly about the future, and being able to maybe work with that. The second is remote viewing. So using remote viewing in terms of gaining information about a certain target, something like that, that you can personally experience. You can test remote viewing yourself anytime that you want. Another is out of body experiences. So astral projection. As you explore out of body experiences, I feel like once you progress through these states of the vibrational state and these highly meditative states, that you can recognize that you are having this sort of experience, that it's actually happening. And the last is the CE5 or HICE, the HICE, where you go out and you can actually experience something where you're physically going out to a certain location. You have an intentionally to have this experience, and then something is interacting with and experiencing with you. So those are the four kind of topics that when I've explored it my entire life, I've really had experiences and that I kind of like just focus on.
And for the, let's say for the HICE interactions, human initiated contact events, I know we can't say I know it's this or I know it's that, what have you, but do you have any kind of impression as to what you think the non-human intelligence is, or like how do you reconcile that?
Yeah, that's a good point, man. I don't because I haven't really, I think about that from time to time of what is actually or what has interacted with me in the past and what could be interacting with me now. Now that I'm not that motivated to interact with anything, and that the path that I'm on could have been set 20 years ago with when I was super motivated in the topic and looking to explore it, and it kind of just like nudged me, or was like, hey, this guy's exploring it, because I do feel like there's an aspect of us reaching out and meeting them on a certain level that they would understand and they can appreciate, to be like, okay, like, this dude's like trying to extend his consciousness and trying to understand what's going on a deeper level with reality, and give him a little bit of a nudge to let him know that he's kind of on the right path, whoever's exploring it. So I think there's a level of that. And whether or not, I think there's definitely I'm more so of like there's almost thousands of non-human intelligences that are probably interacting with us at one time. How much, around us, how much are actually interested in us and care about us and are like taking the time to respond to the stuff that we're trying to do. There's probably maybe a handful that I'm thinking about, but um it's tough to narrow down. And I'm much more of like, there's a lot going on. There's like thousands, almost hundreds of thousands of entities that are probably around us in like this alternate state of consciousness. Um, so it's like a system, I think, as well, where it may cater to the person's religious affiliations, backgrounds, different things, where they can have experiences where they're definitely not on the level that we are of exploring these topics, where you know 90% of the public that aren't really interested in any of this stuff, they're just having experiences based on their physical associations, or stuff like that, of the expectation of what they have when, like, a near death experience of what's going to happen. So whether or not, then we get into deeper of like whether or not non-human, this is a big thing in UFO Twitter, okay? Uh, with abduction experiences, or whether or not like near-death experiences are being manipulated by non-human intelligence. So whether or not the afterlife or our experiences with alternate states of consciousness are being in some way manipulated by non-human intelligence. So they have how Jacques Vallée, I think, has the book where the alien has like the masks, the different masks. So
Yeah.
they're like coming to us in some sort of form to sort of manipulate us to act some sort of way. So I've always found that to be an interesting conversation too.
Yeah. And of course there's highly, I mean, and the thing about that is that, yeah, it's so highly controversial, but at the same time, we have to have that conversation because it's not as if that those questions are not going to be asked, right?
Right.
So you have to have the conversation. Like then let's get to it already then, you know. So I do appreciate those kind of conversations rather than dismissing opinions that you don't necessarily agree with off bat, right? Because yeah, the passport to
So
Madonia. Yeah,
I
go
want to
ahead.
ask you, have how many people, because this is another topic that's highly debated on X. How many people do you know that have gone out intentionally to do a CE5 and have had a negative experience?
Yeah, it's always a one-off. That's the thing. And I know I've personally been out in the field with hundreds of different people.
Yeah.
and traveled around the United States and have been with many like large groups, and it's I can't even recall offhand like, oh wow, that person had a bad experience. Generally speaking, it is reported sometimes, but even then, the people I don't know them personally, but I they have the right, if they're sharing their experience, I appreciate that,
Right.
and they're entitled to how they see it. I'm not going to be like, oh well, they just misinterpreted it. Like, no, that's if that's their experience, that's their experience. I'm not going to question that. But personally, I like 99.999% of people that I know that went out with the positive intention for a positive interaction had just that.
Right. And one of the things that I talk about too in response is the comparison to like a Ouija board, right? Like everybody who I know who has done a Ouija board is like, dude, don't do a Ouija board.
Yeah,
Like, don't do it. So I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna do it. So if I go out and I expect to have a bad experience, that's probably what I'm going to get. That is a lot of the time represented in this whole the heist thing where like, you're going out and who knows what you're contacting and you're opening up something and all of that. So I always go to the Ouija board of the expectation of the people who are going out, where, if it's a very bad or a, apprehensive type of feeling or scared, that you're probably not going to have a great experience. But to me, this is just more of concentrated Skywatch. I think people are making out to be a lot more than things are, when to me, it's just like a lot of the time it just turns into a Skywatch when nothing happens.
yeah,
You have a great time with friends who's a good vibe, and it turns into a good Skywatch.
yeah. Worst case scenario, you get some meditation in and enjoy nature, right?
Yeah.
Maybe a little neck pain.
Or mosquito bites, like
Yeah, yeah. Uh, but the reflective quality of the UFO phenomenon is surely there. And again, it, when people go out with the intention for a positive interaction, like generally that's what they experience. And
yeah.
I don't, there's people that kind of go down the rabbit hole of, well, they're just deceiving you and into these positive experiences. And I mean, I don't see how that's, yeah, I'm open to that conversation, but generally speaking, it doesn't seem to be like any kind of malicious intent in the interaction. Uh, but speaking of all this, recently you were at the Psi Games, and
Yep.
I wanted to get your boots on the ground perspective in regards to the Psi Games. Like, how was it? What went on there? Who participated? What did you see? What kind of like Psi phenomenon did you see, and also how you received it? Like, did it seem authentic or and that kind of thing?
Yeah, no, I actually got involved with the Psi Games about 7 or 8 months ago, and meeting Hakeem, and ended up getting involved in the executive team to help the event. I was really motivated after I heard about it to help out with the development of it. So it was a little bit different going to an event from working behind the scenes. But it was really cool to see because I think a lot of the work that was put into the development. So one of the things we built like a podcast where we talked with a lot of the people who are participating and then a lot of the participants. The participants of the competitors, there was individual competitors that were doing each event, and each event that was there, it was a psychic competition. So if you look at like a psychic Olympics or some sort of setting where there's about 400 people in the room. And it was a very exciting, and the vibes were high. Like there was people with pom poms and cheering, and so that was probably not typical for people who were having or doing these exercises, like PK or Mindsight or remote viewing. They were probably, more used to being in a secluded area and, sensory deprivation or something like that. But They had individual competitors, and then there were two teams, one from the Monroe Institute and one from the organization called Vision Without Eyes. And so they had five events in which they were competing: remote viewing, precognition, dowsing, psychokinesis, and what was the last one? Did I say remote viewing?
Yeah.
Okay. What was the other one? Hold on 1 second. Well, one of the things that I did that I'm kind of proud of is I developed the brochure. So I made this whole thing
Yeah.
beforehand. And precognition and mindsight. Oh, mindsight. So mindsight is interesting because mindsight's kind of been got on the scene a little bit recently and gotten a lot of buzz from some recent side demonstrations. I think you've had Dahlia on too. So Dahlia um, was on a couple demonstrations, and then she was competing as well for the mindsight competition. So the Psi Games itself, there were a lot of great speakers. I mean, Thomas Campbell was there. They had Danny Sheehan, Chris Bledsoe, Adam Curry. Uh, what I liked about the Psi Games and was cool was it really felt like a sporting event. So it really felt like it was like a sports center where as they were doing the remote viewing, so they had the four competitors doing a remote viewing, and you can see on the big screen in real time them drawing out the remote viewing. So
Yeah.
you could it was like a little bit of a peek inside of these remote viewers, what they were doing and like how they were coming up with their submission. And then you had people like Chris Ramsey, Jordan Crowder, Alan Steinfeld, some other people who were specific to some of these events that were commentating. So they're like the commentators, like in real time, like a
Yeah.
baseball announcer or something. And they're talking about remote viewing and, oh, what is remote viewing for people who might not know about that? So they're going through. And then on the other side, there were the judges. So we had people for remote viewing like Paul Smith.
Yeah.
Uh, and people who, Dale Groff, people who were in the Stargate program. These guys were in the remote viewing program, and they're the ones that are judging the remote viewers. So it was really cool to see all of this go down in the span of an hour. And so they were able to see their remote view, reveal the target, compare it, and then have the judges kind of do their judging and see who the best remote viewer was at that time.
Yeah. And what did they do for the PK or the telekinesis stuff? What kind of like
Yeah,
demos
the
did they have for that?
yes. Have you ever heard of the Egley wheel?
I'm not
So it was
sure.
yeah, so I'll send you the picture. It's like a wheel. It's like a plastic wheel on top of a pin. Okay, so if you picture that, it's very sensitive. So they had a plastic case that encompassed this
Okay.
wheel.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so what you would do is you would put your hands inside of this case and try and you couldn't touch the wheel. If you touched the wheel, you were disqualified. So you had to put your hands on each side of the wheel, and then on your screen in front of you, it showed what direction you had to move the wheel. And so it was reading the wheel as you were supposed to move it in a certain direction, and you got points as you were moving it in a certain direction. So, some people had to move it, clockwise, other people counterclockwise. Some people had to do back and forth. So there were different tasks that people had to do that, and you could see in real time, and then you had all of basically it was the wheel and then these guys' hands right next to each other. And at one point there was a guy who was moving around really quickly, and the crowd was like, "Oh my God, yeah!"
Yeah.
The best part was the Monroe Institute. They brought these pom pom things, like 100 of them. So people are waving the pom. Ah, they're going
Yeah.
crazy. So, but there was actually some movement. I mean, there was definitely movement in the wheels, but yeah, that's what they were doing. They were trying to move these PK wheels that are pretty well known throughout testing.
Yeah. A lot of the ones I see when they test now is like so they use some kind of foil on the pin or something, but they do use the case,
Right.
some kind of plastic case. Uh, was there anything there that kind of like that blew your mind or that stood out to you among the whole Psi games?
I mean, The Psi Games itself, I think the platform is very encouraging. I'm here. The skeptic's going to come out of me right now. I'm a lot more apt to get like perfect the testing, perfect the platform in which people are competing at. So, uh, for example, the Dahlia thing I think was very impressive. Everybody was going crazy. It was probably one of the more significant events of what happened. To me, though, I would like to see more controls put in place with some of the testing, even with the the dowsing. So the dowsing one was cool. It was cool to see too. So they what how the dowsing one went was there were cork boards, 6 cork boards, and under one of them was a silver coin, and then under another one was a bronze coin. And basically they had to identify which where was the silver one, where was the bronze, or where was the copper coin. Everyone got it wrong except for one person who got it all right. So, but it was interesting to see like how that process. So, and then the precognition test was just a very simple test where you're picking a picture, whether it's going to be on the left side or the right side, and it could have been done a little bit uh, better. But again, it's just a lot of the improvement of the games. But I think the platform itself and the atmosphere of what it was incredibly impressive and encouraging for the whole field, because parapsychology has kind of been caught in um old school for like 20 years. It's just
Yeah.
been it's
20,
parapsychology. Nobody likes to call it
yeah.
parapsychology anymore.
Yeah.
You want to call it psi. So to bring it up to the psi games and have all of these people who have been involved, Diane Hennessy Powell was there. People who have been involved in the research that have really done the work, were there supporting the event. And so I think like if we can lean on the judges or the people scientifically, I think can really be something that could like turn into a significant, it could be a sporting event. It really could be something.
Yeah. To me, the kind of aspect of size is fascinating, right? And I think it kind of goes hand in hand with, what people call disclosure, right?
Mm.
Uh, in the sense of, you know, is non-human intelligence real? Are they engaging with us? Like a whole nother aspect of that conversation, which is parallel, is the human potential, right? Like how is it that we can interact with non-human intelligence through our consciousness, right? Like
Yeah.
that's like just as crazy as are they here? And well, and that's something really cool about like HICE or contact work CE5 is that two birds in one stone basically. Uh, but and there's going to be another Psi Games next year,
Yeah, they already announced it's going to be in Charlotte, so be the next, and I think it'll be, there's online testing platforms that we're working on, and apps, and um I'm working with Jared too on getting EEG involved with a lot of the stuff that we're working on with contactees. And I think that HICE, I don't know how that would be involved in the Psi Games, but I feel like it should be involved in the Psi
right?
Games,
Right, for
you
sure.
know?
I mean, yeah. I think it would be great to involve it. You'd probably have to do it right on like a daily basis. Or yeah, I mean, it's so like how would you set that up, right? And quantify it.
A- How would you confront, like, what would be the most legitimate? Like, honestly, I feel whenever something like this is a prime example of Bledsoe's event that he just had at the Psy Games. There's so much controversy already that's played out. But I wonder at the same time if there's something that is able to be set up to completely confirm that something that happens in the sky is anomalous, that it's not a satellite, it's not a plane, it's not a bug, it's not a bird, it's not anything. That is someone is there anything or any mobile setup that people are able to bring to something to
So Rob Freeman, who was at
right?
the Psi Games, who has the Vision Without Eyes school. He has the what did he call his rig? He had a name. He had a really cool name for it, but he has this crazy like multi-sensor platform that has like maybe different like 20 different sensors on it. I don't think he brought it to the Psi Games, but I haven't seen him use it in a while. But I know Rob Freeman has like a crazy uh rig that has like thermal, night vision, uh and other special devices that can track kind of like anomalous activity. I mean, other than getting data on separate platforms and corroborating it, I mean that's the best you can do, right? And see if it's
Well,
ref
yeah, it's like I think this is the motivation of why I ended up working with Jared, meeting without him and doing the conscious contract work with CCW is the idea behind the correlation behind finding something else that's going on behind a UFO sighting. That it's not just you seeing something in the sky, that something else with the observer is happening and something else that you can measure of just not the video of it. So it's kind of capturing the moment. How can you best capture the sighting, the UFO sighting itself with the observer in any way that you're able to in real time, compare it to anything that's going on in their brain or anything that's going on in their body to when that sighting happens, I think is important. And so if you're able to outfit people who are supposedly having these experiences very often, they're going out and making contact. So that's, I think, the most important thing. And same with the Psi games. The Psi games should be about the best and most skilled psychic practitioners coming together to prove that this shit is real, to contribute to the science, to say, I have this ability and I want to show that this is real, and I want people who can measure me to figure out what's going on and to measure this stuff. And I think the more that we can get people that are genuinely like have that, feeling behind that, I think it's just going to help for a lot of it.
Yeah, and I hope to see Jared's work and the app come out because I that yeah, it's an incredible tool, right? You could the EEG, heart rate monitor, all that stuff because I get yeah, that's another way to like cross-pollinate the data points. And the what's what do you take? Oh, there was there a demonstration at the Psi Games with Dahlia and her daughter Lidu?
Yeah, just the same demonstration. Um, a lot of what I saw from the contact in the desert. Again, dude, like I'm a stickler. I'm a little bit of a skeptic. What I would like to see is her not holding it for her to pick out the letters, like an easel or something where there's not it just it, there's a little bit too much that I think could be it felt a little bit of a demonstration and more and less of like an actual testing environment.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I don't know. I don't have an issue with it. It's I think there's something there. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I think that it could be perfected and shown a little bit better and
Well, and
cleaner.
I think that's also a misconception too, is that, they are doing the studies, right? And
Right.
Dr. Diane Hennessy Powell and Dahlia mentioned Stanford and Harvard. That's not what's going on when they're doing the tests, right? This kind of stuff is a demonstration. Even when I had Dahlia on my channel and she did a demonstration there, uh, I had to say up front, like, there's a bit of, this is not proof, right? This is a demonstration
Right.
to get, as an example. I believe it to be genuine. I don't think there's any kind of trickery going on. In a real testing setting, you absolutely need actual controls and for it to be completely legit because at that point you're proving it, right? And I hope that, yeah, I from what I understand though, they're actually doing those tests, and they do have the controls in place for those tests, and that's going to come out by the end of the year. And I'm excited about also the telepathy tapes
Right.
documentary, because I know they're kind of doing that work behind the scenes as well. What
Well, the telepathy tapes, I think, is a great example of how um, there's been a wealth of research already done on the topic. And the issue in the, before I was into the UFO Twitter and the UFO topic, I've been heavy into parapsychology in the sci field because when I moved to where I am, I got involved with the Rhine Research Center, which is the oldest
Okay, wow, yeah, yeah.
parapsychology lab in the United States. So they came from Duke University studying parapsychology. So I became like a nerd, a super nerd about psi and science and all of this stuff. So I became way more involved. But the problem with the whole field has been marketing. It's been so stuck in the past of, we've got to do things by a journal and we've got to, publish things and it's got to be through books and newsletters and they're just not up to, and then the telepathy tapes comes along and presents it in a very great way, a fresh new take on the telepathy tape, on telepathy in general and about the research, and it's told in a great story, and so I think that just helped the field, and it showed that there's a wealth of knowledge there, but it just needs to be presented and marketed in a good way for the public to consume it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the telepathy tapes and Kai Dakins completely accomplished that. And I know they have another season of the podcast coming out, I think in October, September, October, and then they're also have the documentary coming out early next year. So again, I look forward to the developments in that, and again, the public reception, right? Because similar to disclosure, once people like have the idea that psi is real, right? Sometimes that's all it takes for people to have like a genuine direct experience, right? That simple shift in your mindset.
Right.
And even with HICE, right? Like if you have somebody that they're just so driven and motivated like you were early on, right? And you just have that fire, right? That energy, um, it just happens, right? And I think that also the idea of the UFO disclosures contributing to an entire paradigm shift, right? Because it's not just, oh, there's UFOs, right? It's like UFOs, consciousness, psi, the nature of reality, the whole thing. You have to reevaluate.
What do you
But
think is driving it? Do you think disclosure, do you think non-human intelligence is driving it?
so they definitely have a huge influence over it, right? Whether intentionally or unintentionally or directly or indirectly, their their involvement and interaction is one of the greatest determining factors of disclosure, right?
Yeah.
Their their choice to either act and interact or not interact is completely there on them, right? We have some kind of agency in the sense of like HICE and CE5. That's what I like about it, is we can participate in some way. But and this is the thing, right? If non-human intelligence wanted to, they could just let us know like flat out, like they're here, right? In an
Right.
instant, right? Like something out of that childhood's end, where there's like everybody has like this kind of experience, right? Or Peter Levenda said, if everybody had the same globally simultaneously telepathic message, that's contact, right? That's
Right. Or
open
like a
contact.
dream or some shit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, something
Yeah.
like that. Just like that's disclosure, right?
Right.
Uh, so the cards to some extent are in the phenomenon's hands, as in that regard. Now, I mean, we have the information and everything to disclose it ourselves, but we're not doing it, right? And the phenomenon itself has been elusive. I don't want to like assign any kind of reason to why they're doing it because I don't know, right? I I think the idea that they don't want to force their presence on us like in an overwhelming way makes sense, but people debate that and are skeptical of that. And yeah, I mean, I think it's a valid conversation as to why they haven't disclosed to what level they're going to interact because
It
you know,
feels like they have in some sort, if you look at people who have had experiences with non-human intelligence, like one of the things that I love doing is reading those accounts of people who have had an out-of-body experience. Or one of the most interesting parts of the free research study, which is the study by Ray Hernandez, where he looks at people who have had
yeah,
experiences with beings and different types of entities, but 80% had an out of body element into
yeah,
that. So I always love the accounts where people are having out of body experiences or alternate states of consciousness, and then they're interacting with beings on their same level. And then the beings are like, okay, here's the deal, or like, here's the information that I want to get to you. So they wait for the experiencers to get on their level to where they're, on the same kind of plane of communication, and then they're like, okay, and a lot of the messages are very similar. So if you look at the characteristics of what they're saying, the concern for humanity, nuclear weapons, it's a lot of the same tribes of what we've heard of the concerns for non-human intelligence. But I just find it very interesting that when you look at people who have had experiences with different non-human intelligences in out-of-body states, that a lot of the messages are very same.
yeah. I mean, even my in my own experiences that they communicated that they wanted people to know about them. And, I always just have to caveat it and say, I don't know if I just interpreted it that way or it was a genuine communication. It felt as genuine can be, but I caveat it like that. Yeah, so and it kind of speaking of these kind of engagements, right? Like HICE, human initiated contact. What's your take so far on Skywatcher, right? We've
Right.
had HICE or CE5 groups for decades and decades. And I mean, like that idea is not new, but formally, at least in the let's say the even the years and the decades of the contactees in the 50s going out to Giant Rock and trying to telepathically communicate with UFOs, and then Mission Rama in the 70s, and then in the 1990s, Dr. Stephen Greer and CSETI, and also the ESETI Ranch. Um, people have formally been going out and with the intention of having contact with UFOs specifically.
Yeah.
And now we have a group of people that are, it's a private group, right? In the sense where it's not it's not completely government, right? There's former, I mean, as far as we know, right?
Right.
Former government assets, but you know, private sector individuals with tracking equipment and they're going to document it and they're very ambitious, and they want to do human initiated contact and at the very least, record data on it. At the most, take into possession a UFO, which that's a whole nother thing.
Right.
Um, but what's your take so far on Skywatcher?
I was very encouraged when I first heard about Skywatcher. I really liked their first episode. I like their approach, data oriented. The two organizations which I've been paying to attention to the most this year have been Arrow and Skywatcher. Those are the two organizations which I pay to with the UAP topic. When it comes to Skywatcher, I think for me, it's gonna go supporting wise, how transparent they're really going to be with the data that they're getting. So, for example, Jared went out there and was one of the psionics. I know a couple people who went out there and were part of the psionics. That's not the transparent. The more of the transparency that I'm looking for is the actual data that they're trying to present on their website as the sensor data of what they're actually gathering with the mechanics and dog whistle activity, different things like that, where it can be replicated. Because I think if they're really truly helping the field, that they would publish that data. What I don't want to see is like another Bigelow situation where somebody comes in with a whole bunch of money and they just grab all the data and they say, "Okay, it's mine. I'm just going to hoard all the data." And you know, whatever they're going to do with it is their priority. But I would hope that for Skywatcher and a lot of these initiatives that are presenting themselves as like part of the transparency, part of the disclosure, as being able to, because to me, one of the biggest things that's lacking in the UAP field is the science, the scientific field, the development of it. The most one of the most ironic things to me is the relationship between Psi and UAP, because for years, the UFO topic wanted to be involved in parapsychology. They wanted it to study it. They wanted, parapsychologists to come out and study the UFO topic, and they just couldn't do it. There wasn't enough validity in it. Now the UFO topic has essentially leapfrogged the Psi topic in terms of attention because of journalism, 2017, TTSA, all of these people, the podcast, they're driving the UFO topic. So it's leapfrogged the parapsychology and all of that. And the parapsychology is like, wait a minute, we, we've got all this evidence. We've got remote viewing, we've got precognition, ESP, all of this stuff, and they don't know how to market it. So now so now the UFO topic is saying, okay, well, wait a minute, there's this consciousness side of this thing. There's this psi aspect. So
Mm.
it's this whole like I'm just watching this play out from a larger point of view, but the fields are so, in reality they're all blending. It's blending together into some field where it's consciousness and that. But I think transparency is going to rule. So I really hope that Skywatcher, to answer your question, going forward with whatever they're doing with psionics or whoever they're working with, I just really hope they're transparent so that other people can take what they're doing and replicate it and say, yeah, what Skywatcher did, they went out and they measured this. I want to do that, and I want to get the same stuff that they're getting.
Yeah. And a few thoughts come to mind. I mean, that's one thing where I feel that uh CSETI, the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence, and Dr. Stephen Greer, whether you love him or hate him, he did it in a very charismatic way. Um, but he also has like a very kind of culty type following, which is, not entirely his fault, right? Um, but he was able to mobilize and get the attention of, and not just that, get people out in the field, right?
Yeah.
I had wished even that he did more documentation of what he was doing, because I was at several CSETI events where there was a very genuine anomalous activity, uh, and it like none of it was recorded. Uh, and but there's a little bit of a dichotomy in my experience with CE5 and HICE, and that is, and I've experienced this myself, right? Is like when you go out with the mindset that you need to document this, the level of the interaction is not the same if you just say you go out strictly with the intention to interact, right?
Right.
And engage the phenomenon and say the hell with everything else. That's when it is the most potent and magical, in the sense where just like the high strangeness is off the charts, and all that the true level of interaction is going on. And there's got to be some in between, right? I mean, there have been good CE5 events documented over the years, but none of it compares to like I know if, like you've been out in the field and had like a great night, like how incredible that is. And like, man, if I just had this documented, like, you know,
Right. No, dude, dude, I love this because I think to me, it's about the journey of people going out just enough to get people intrigued to go out themselves.
yeah,
So I don't want to go. I'm and the point of me going out is not to give you the answer, is not to document it and then bring you the answer so that you don't have to go out. The point is so that you go out. You're curious enough to actually experience this. And that's why the experiencer part of this to me is like the in the top of the priority to me because um to show the journey that you're exploring this topic and that when people go out and they're trying to document this, it's not about going out and getting the undeniable proof of something in the sky. It's about you going out and exploring it, and so other people are like, damn, like this dude is genuinely going out and like five times nothing happened, but he's still going out and trying to like really see because I tell people when they're involved, I'm like, dude, if you're getting into the heist, like if you're not willing to go out like 10 times genuinely and go out and explore it, then like don't waste your time. You
yeah,
should like because that's how I was. My mentality was like it wasn't like I'm gonna put all or nothing on this. Is like I'm gonna try it once and then if it happens, it does. I said I'm gonna go out 10 times. If nothing happens, then there's probably nothing to it. And by the fifth time, like I said, I was going out with my brother. I just kind of on spot, stuff started to happen. So I think you have to like kind of genuinely find a way for people to get interested in it too.
yeah. And it's not always like so linear in the sense like you can say you spend the whole day doing meditation and protocols and all that, and you're doing your intention, and you go out that night, and then nothing happens. But then the next day, you're driving home from work, you get out of the car and it's there, right?
Right,
So it's not you also it's not just so acute of an effect, right? Once you put out that intention, for all you know, like a month later, boom, right? That's how CE5 is for whatever reason. And I always said like, if you're gonna go out and do CE5, I always advise preparation work because it's like the equivalent of like if you're gonna hang if you have the intention of you're gonna meet up with even one of your friends, right? You don't just say, "Hey, meet me 20 minutes down the street," right? Like you let them know a few days before, like, "Hey, just so you know, you want to meet up on Friday 8 o'clock," right?
yeah,
Like we're not, and that's the whole thing of like the summoning, right? It's an invitation. We're not demanding anything of the UFO phenomenon. They are the ones that are deciding if they're going to come or not. So I always advise people do preparation work, and that the effect might not be immediate or acute, right? It could take, for whatever reason, the UFO phenomenon is going to respond when it does, why it was on its own terms, right? And we're kind of participating in that, but we're not, setting the restrictions. It's going to interact when and how it wants.
right.
And again, it could take a week, right? Or a month, and then for some reason the activity just begins, right?
It's sort of like you're really not dictating the experience, but if you're open and receptive to experiences happen, that you can then recognize something that could come from, a non-human intelligence.
Right. And it might not always happen how you expect it to, right? Like even uh, orbs coming into the group or something like that. Like that stuff can happen. It might not be what you expect to see in a movie, right? With this like triangle or disc coming in. And I mean, I don't want to say that stuff like that can happen, and it has happened during CE5s. But you also have to, in some way, let go of the expectation in the sense of if you're looking for just this, like one thing, you could potentially be missing all this other stuff that's going on.
Right,
And not even in just like a physically perceptual sense, in that if that's your mindset, that's what your mind is tuning into, even like psychically, right? So if you let go of your focus a little bit, and broaden your aperture, you mentally, right? You could That could lead to you having a more subtle perception and picking up on stuff that's actually going on all around you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I want to shift gears here a little bit because I did want to talk about like UFO disclosure in general, right?
Hmm.
Where we are at right now. You had a conversation and, about the idea of like, oh, somebody said that Ross had said the Tic Tac is Lockheed, it's man-made.
Oh yeah.
That came in the conversation. So what are your thoughts on that?
You know what? In working with Need to Know and Ross for the past year, it was incredibly interesting to see how that played out for the last month.
Yeah.
And I think you'll find for the next episode of Need to Know that there's some surprises in order, but exciting times ahead for the show. But for me, um, I looked at what Ross said. I looked at what Eric Burleson said about the Tic Tac. To me, what I gathered from that was that David Grush had to have been a source for that. Had to, because without them both coming out, David Grush is the personal advisor for Eric Burleson, and he's also who Ross Coulthart broke for News Nation for the story. So for those two guys who are Eric Burleson's leading disclosure in my eyes, excuse me, for Congress right now. And Ross Coulthart is really leading disclosure for the news and journalism. For those two guys that come out as confidently as they were, to say that Lockheed Martin was is Lockheed, is owner of the Tic Tac, or developer of the Tic Tac, uh, is it would have to lead to an uncomfortable situation to where David Grush is one of the main sources for that, and the legitimacy of a lot of what he's talking about. I think one of the things that we should look at is the direction of where disclosure needs to go now, because if we're trying to find alien spaceships through Congress and they're trying to look over stones that these guys have seen coming for 20 years, like that's the thing, we're mapping out everything that we're going to do. But if now Lockheed Martin has some sort of alien technology or back engineered, we should as disclosure focus on that. Focus on where the back engineered technology is actually taking place and try and find some sort of answers that way, because I think that's when we get into the uncomfortable situations of who's back engineering technology and how are we using it. If there's crash retrievals, that's a lot more likely scenario to me than if we're going to just get some sort of answer announced by our president about our interactions with the gray aliens or something that we've had. So I feel like disclosure is not in a very great place right now. But overarching, if you zoom out, you got JD Vance talking about aliens and his obsession with the topic. Tulsi Gabbard is talking about like there's some big figures that are talking about Donald Trump. I mean, our president and vice president are vocally and publicly talking about the UFO topic. That's a huge deal. But I think once you get down into the weeds of the whistleblowers of coming out with some real evidence of showing that there's crash retrieval programs, we're just not there yet, unfortunately. And so I hope in the next couple of years we make some real big strides there.
Yeah, I hope so too. And I mean, again, there's the idea of the phenomenon has a say also in it, but then again, we can't depend on that, right? Like in the sense
Yeah.
like it's up to us really to get it done, and I certainly hope to see it. And
Well,
then
you know what I think? So I think UFO and UAP disclosure is going to be different from the discovery of non-human intelligence. I think those are going to be two different things. that whether through DMT, these DMT studies, or someone that does a real convincing out of body study, or study where they're contacting non-human intelligence or quantum mechanics or something, coming up here. I think the discovery of non-human intelligence is going to be different from UFO disclosure.
You said, I mean, how do you see that playing out then?
Well, I would say, and you kind of are seeing it now. If you look at people like Gary Nolan, Carl Nell, what they're saying is that non-human intelligence is real. Like whether it's extraterrestrials, ultra terrestrials, we're interacting with something, but our dealings with the technology in which they've using is classified. We can't talk about that. We can't talk about our government technology of how we've interacted with them or how we've used them. They're there. Non-human intelligence is around. There's aliens around us. We can acknowledge that. I think that's kind of what's playing out. And I think, there just needs to be some sort of study that really is a little bit more conclusive that we have to show that, yeah, there's, throughout history, throughout alternate states of consciousness, there's interactions with non-human intelligence, and that it's actually a real thing.
Yeah. And again, it's almost it's crazy that we're having the parallel, right? With I think something like the telepathy tapes, right? And it's like alongside of each other. And I think almost like the telepathy thing is even crazier in some sense than the disclosure thing, right? Uh, but I think both of them are part of the same thing, and I think that you know we're kind of going through a paradigm shift, and then and then you bring in the whole AI thing and everything else, and it's like, and I can't even imagine in 20 years from now what the world is going to look like between all of those things.
Right, for
Um,
just our kids, dude, like for
yeah,
kids. And I just look at my kids growing up and how they get information and who they're interested in, and how the UAP topic, it's almost like the adapting. So it's like a way for people to become interested in the topic, but we, as the UFO community and advocates in the topic, we have to adapt to get younger people interested in the topic, and that's something that I'm always thinking about, dude.
yeah. Well, Tyler, it's been great having you on. Definitely want to have you back on again, and I've been meaning to have you on with Jared as well,
Awesome.
or on a panel. And where can people connect with your work?
Yeah, so my website, theastral.com, a lot of the main stuff that I'm working on, you can see some of the projects. I'm over on X. A lot of my activity is on X or Twitter, at the underscore astral underscore. Um, so I can share a lot of stuff. I do a weekly remote viewing over there. So I hide a random picture inside of an envelope and then reveal it, host a space. Have hosted a couple events there. So feel free to hit me up over there, interact with me, and then visit the website. So thanks again, James. Really appreciate you having me on, dude.
Yeah, it's great finally talking to you, and I hope to speak to you again soon, man.
Awesome. Thank you, bro.
Be well.